Everybody wants to be my enemy. By Nyan Sangetsu, Chapter 4. Look out for yourself. Look at all this loot. Look out for yourself. Potter had never been prouder. Why wouldn't she be? As far as she was concerned, she had every right to grin like a loon, and frankly, she didn't care who stared at her. Let Vi worry, let Milo scowl, let Claire balk, just thinking about what she'd done today, what she had accomplished, but put a spring in her step. Why, you ask? What was the reason for all this merry madness? Nothing simpler because the heister had gone off without a hitch. That's right. Chase aside, they'd gotten off scot free. Well, mostly. Basically, pretty much. So, what if they'd ransacked a built-over penthouse and run from a few imposters? You couldn't get an omelet without breaking a few eggs. They were free. Everyone was just fine. They each had a sack of loot to their name, and the enforcers hadn't been able to catch them. Really, her only regret was that she hadn't had a chance to showcase her sick new skills. Would it have been too much to ask for a few guards to fight? Yes, no, maybe so. Regardless, she couldn't help but preen as she sling her sack off of ill-gotten gains over one shoulder. She was somebody now, not a jinx. No, never a jinx. No matter what Milo said, screw Milo. What did he know? And besides, it wasn't like anyone had noticed beyond a few enforcers. Why did she feel like she was forgetting something? A distant explosion echoed behind them. She winced. Oh, right. That. You see the kids? Nope. Naruto kept his eyes on the scroll before him, never once looking up as Vander closed the attic door behind him. They're kids, Vander, not baby birds. Let them stretch their wings once in a while. He traced a thin line across it, then frowned when the ink smoldered away. Blast it, he'd never been the best at sealing. They're probably running around the lanes, nothing to worry about. Easy for you to say. Distantly, he heard the reformed gangster pull up a chair. You only deal with powder for a few hours. I've got to corral all four of the little buggers every day. Was it? Powder was a handful to keep track of at the best of times, and really, it was too. Vice seemed determined to keep an eye on him. He didn't know about the boys. They avoided him like the plague. But the sisters were difficult enough to deal with on a good day. They're good kids, he muttered, tracing another black line on the parchment. This one held when he applied chakra to it. A smile creased his whiskered visage. Just give him a chance. I could say the same about you. The man must have lit his pipe because his nose caught the faint scent of smoke in the air. Powders looks up to you. Don't squander that. I won't. What's the worst that could happen? A beat of silence stretched between the two of them. Banter sighed into it. You do realize you just jinxed it, right? Bah! The blonde scoffed, rolled up his scroll, and pivoted to face him. Silly superstitions. I didn't jinx anything. A faint tremor rattled the world. Both men paused. Naruto palmed his forehead with a sigh. Maybe I spoke too soon. Take no prisoners, boy! And strange as it might sound, Powder was grateful when Deckard and his gang joined them. He and his poorly named bullies were nothing less than nothing. But it finally gave her a chance to shine. No more running, no more being the useless little sister, the jinx, the one everyone hated. Today, she fought back. Deckard lunged at her with a snarl. Give me the loot, you little shit. Violet shouted a warning, probably fearing the worst. She needn't have worried. Decker dove, to which Powder dodged back. He made a blink, grabbed for the sack she held. The move was obvious, telegraphed even, and she responded accordingly. His hand swept down, fingers clenched into a claw. Powder's hand slashed up, and bone crashed, and he recoiled, clutching two broken fingers. I'll skin you alive. She beckoned him. Gotta catch me first, ugly. Adrenaline spurred him onwards as he surged after her. Powder didn't fight. She danced, swaying in and out of his slopping strikes, giving ground to her adversary, yet it was on her terms that she did so, hers, not his. When she retreated, she did so knowing precisely where she was going, guiding him to the point he failed to see. Never use your gifts to be cruel. Naruto's voice ran in her head. He'd been quite clear on that front. Do you understand, Powder? When do you fight? Make it clean. And she dodged aside, loosening a strand of blue hair as a wild fist curled past. A smile touched her lips. Of course, she understood. Yep, she understood perfectly. This wasn't cruelty. Now, was it? This was self-defense. She was defending herself from an idiot who didn't know any better. And besides, Deckard was so very slow. Had he always been this slow, or was she just that much faster? His fist scythed through the air in undercurrent arcs, any one of which would have knocked the wind right out of her if they connected. Big if that. Now I may not don't have the eyes. Naruto's voice came back to hers in the instant, but I know enough to take someone down without hurting them too bad. You see, it's all in the pressure points. Deckard's right arm whistled past, and Powder stepped up, driving taunt fingers into the point near the base of his shoulder. The limb dropped loose at his side. He balked at it, unable to understand what just happened to him. The moment he did, his face turned an alarming shade of red. He ripped a knife from his belt, and if that doesn't take him down, well, just hit him harder. Always worked for me. Powder took a stance just as she'd been taught. A quick hop carried her forwards, her right hand clenched into a fist, and she let it fly. Deckard never heard her coming. How could he? The larger boy was still winding up when she nailed him. One moment he was bearing down on her with a crashed look in his eye. In the next, Powder swayed back with deceptive grace, weaving left and right like water, leaving his knife to sweep harmlessly past. Then her eyes flashed, and she slammed a fist into Deckard's stomach with all her might. The largest boy folded over her outstretched limb with a grunt, retching for air. Ribs didn't just crack; he was still gasping when a rousing uppercut caught him in the chin. She felt something shatter under her fist. The impact launched him into a wall. The boy slid down it and dropped like a sack of potatoes, wheezing softly. Clacker gasped. Wow. Milo whistled. Damn. Vi found herself frowning. Since when could you do that? Powder gripped her wrist, hiding her hand behind her back. Since, a while ago. Naruto was waiting at the last drop when they returned. Bander wasn't with him. Somehow that made it worse. So much worse. Those normally gentle blue eyes were hard and stern, both arms crossed before his chest. One foot tapped impatiently against the floor. He didn't have to say anything. One look was all it took. His head jerked towards the back door. Powder peeled off from her siblings and followed him, heedless of Vi's protest. Said protest died when he planted a hand between her shoulders and guided her into one of the back rooms. He steered her to a chair, sat her down, and crouched before her. What did you do? Powder wilted a little on the inside. All right, but you can't be mad at me. I'm not mad. He patted her head. I just like to know what you did. She gulped once, marshalling her courage. We hit a house. Did you? Naruto quirked a brow. Any good loot? Powder opened a heavy sack she had. A low whistle was her reward. All that training really paid off. Her grin was nothing short of euphoric. I kicked ass, and look at these. She held up a trio of tiny glowing spheres. Aren't they pretty? Naruto eyed them with an air of dread. What? What are those? Don't know. Really? Can I keep them? He didn't answer that. Instead, he hit her with another question. Did you have anything to do with that explosion in the upper city? Silence reigned between them. Powder wanted to tell him more. She really did, but she couldn't. She absolutely did not dare. Vander was going to be plenty cross with Vi already. Any more news might make him explode, especially once he learned of the explosion. Why had it been delayed? She had been careful with the shiny stones. Sure, she might have dropped one when she ran, but why would it take so long to explode? She was missing something here, but she was just a kid. Damn it, how was she supposed to know? Naruto sighed into the silence. I taught you better than this. That toward Powder warbled once and surged forward. I'm sorry. Her head slammed into his stomach. I won't do it again, I promise. If you just teach me more stuff, I wouldn't have to. Naruto tensed for a moment. Eventually, he deflated. You can't learn everything I know. Not yet. His fist curled around a mote of light, stiffly it. Absolutely not. Things like the Rasen Shuriken are too dangerous. But you said you'd teach me. He could feel the thorns in her voice. You promised. Just like that, she changed gears. Please, please, please. Can I at least learn the Rasengan? Fine. His face softened into a careworn smile. I can try to teach you that, at least. Powder dared a tentative grin. Everything would be alright, wouldn't it? The very next day, the enforcers hit the lane. Previews. Powder raised a hand. Question. What's a sage? Naruto's smile was all teeth. You're about to learn. Don't do this. I'm sorry, I have to. Vi thrashed against her restraints. What do you want with me? Let me go. A moment of your time, Silco smiled softly. Nothing more. Those two, they don't understand power. They're not willing to dirty their hands. But I am, and so are you, I think. Vi paused. They shot him in the face. Naruto's head snapped back. Powder screamed until his head swung back down. There was a bullet in his teeth. His eyes were gold. The funny thing is, he bit down hard, shattering the casing between his incisors. Under any circumstances, you might have had a point there. End of chapter 4. Everybody Wants to Be My Enemy by Neon Sangetsu. Chapter 5. Oh, the misery. With great power comes great responsibility, and if you're not careful, misery. Such misery. Oh, the misery. Naruto had never seen something so ridiculous as an enforcer before. Needless to say, he wasn't impressed. Not one bit. The police of Piltover may have appeared imposing to ordinary folk, large and looming, clad in heavy armor fused to their clothes, anonymous faces hid behind large goggles fused to bulky rebreathers, each of which were lent with their every breath a menacing, rasping quality. But that's all they were: men in armor, toy soldiers. Armor hadn't stopped him back in the elemental nations, and it was hardly going to impede him now if it came to a fight. He saw them in the streets, scoffed, and kept walking. Besides, the purpose of their visit was clear. If their brusqueness didn't give it away, their emotions and the man leading them all but threw that notion to the wolves. They were looking for someone, several someones, weren't being too subtle with their questions either. Even a blind man could tell who they were after. Can you blame them? Powder and the rest were hardly subtle. Only makes sense they'd be hunted. Ugh! He pinched the bridge of his nose to stifle an oncoming migraine. Don't remind me. A fresh commotion ahead caught his attention. Evidently, they were interrogating someone and couldn't see who from this angle. Still, there were only five of them, four heavily armored and one not so. An interrogator or some such. He knew he could clear them out, but technically they weren't doing anything wrong. A slight shrug rolled his shoulders. Guess I'm taking the long way today. Powder would understand once he explained himself. Hey! A sudden yelp had him turning back again, just in time to spy a familiar crop of pink hair in the guard's grasp. His first instinct was to ignore it. Really, what were the chances? Slim to none. There was just no way his luck was that. Then he glimpsed the rest of her, and realization dawned just as he saw her right arm locked in an enforcer's grip. Vi, she matches the description. One of the enforcers was visible. His eyes, at very least. Take her. Nope, not having that. Are we doing this? Right here, right now. Of course they were. Powder would never let him live it down if he walked away now. Three quick strides carried him forward, then three more. By the sixth, chakra was already surging through his veins. He didn't so much walk as he did glide forward. Even with one arm, it was the simplest thing to slip in between the men. They didn't even notice him until he was among them, grinning from ear to ear. Hey now! He bodily interposed himself between them and prized her out of the enforcer's grasp. There you are! I was looking all over for you. You had me worried. You! Bodily sputtered. Now wait just a second. Honestly, Naruto most certainly did not stop and did not and talked right over her. Kids these days, don't mind her. Just picking up my daughter. We'll be on our way now. Isn't that right, kiddo? Vi nodded, but glared bloody red daggers at him, promising death if he called her his offspring again. A hand came down on his shoulders, stopping them short. You there! A half-masked enforcer regarded him balefully. Do you live here? No. Naruto plastered a smile to his face. I'm afraid we don't. Just passing through, friend. I don't like your tone. So much for the easy way out. If they were going to force this, they'd be sorely disappointed. No, a tilt of the head followed him. But I was being polite. Thought you law and order types like that. The man made a grab for him. Listen here, you. Ah, Naruto batted the hand away. Don't touch what you can't afford. I like this jacket. It was almost worth it to see his face purple like that. Hands off. You're not going anywhere. The pompous little man tried to shove him and failed miserably. Identify yourself. Sure, he was all too happy to make a scene with so many eyes on him. I'm Naruto, and you are? Not yours, you blithering oaf. Naruto feigned a gasp. Did you forget your own name? How sad! Vi snorted, and the younger enforcer paused, realizing he'd been had. I know my name, damn it! Do you? You don't seem terribly bright. And that name would be Marcus! Had he ever been this hot headed? He already knew the answer. Just thinking about it shamed him. Alright then, Marcus. He began slowly, choosing each word with infinite care. You don't want to do this. It's clearly a case of mistaken identity. So let's just be bygones. And the largest enforcer stepped forward. He was a great big brute of a man, easily a hand taller than him, brimming with muscle. Naruto felt a tiny flicker of hostility long before he resolved himself to act. Even so, he stood his ground. With his good arm, he pushed the violet behind him. Don't, he warned, looking up at him. Be smart about this. An arm swung back, ponderously slow, so very slow. He could have dodged it any number of ways, taking the fist and the arm to sides. Those of the lanes might even praise him for such savagery. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and evil for evil. Blue eyes narrowed, shimmering with a sliver of gold as he pulled on the natural energy in the air. Not a heartbeat later, clenched knuckles plowed into his face. Ah! And the enforcer dropped to his knees with a shriek as every bone in his face shattered. Anger sparked to life in him, burning bright and white hot. They were still screaming when a kick caught his chin and laid him out flat. So uncivilized. Listen, friend. Nat cracked his neck, rolled his eyes, and turned to face him. Do you really want to do this dance? What the hell was that? Marcus stumbled back, eyes wide. Who are you? I'm just a simple man making his way in the world, like my father before me. He tutted and started forward. Another enforcer lunged. He kicked backwards like a mule, launching them into their wounded comrade, never once breaking eye contact. You think you know what strength is? What monsters are? He stood before Marcus, looming in a way he hadn't in ages. You have no idea. I've got one inside me. He tapped a finger to his stomach. He's begging me to kill you. I'm not. Shh, just let me scare him off. Outwardly, he smiled. So why don't you just. A black baton cracked down on the back of his head hard enough to make him bite his tongue. Steel met skull and snapped in half. A faint noise of disbelief trickled through the third enforcer's mask. Naruto craned his neck back to regard them. Though those heavy goggles and helm hit his face, he felt the man's confusion keenly as his own anger. That's the way, he tutted. Keep trying, keep trying. His knees crashed upwards and embedded itself in the man's torso. He folded like a wet paper bag, slumping at his feet. A quick stomp on his armored skull put him out of commission entirely. Where once there had been five, now there were only two, Marcus and his single guard, the latter of which reached for their rifle. It was a large, unwieldy thing of little use at close range. No chance of killing him. You look nervous. Naruto cooed at him, crooking two fingers forwards. What's wrong? Want me to promise you? He was still speaking before the enforcer shot him point blank in the face. Not a bad shot. Quick, lethal to the point. His head snapped back from the sheer momentum of it as a wisp of smoke filled the air. Bai screamed until his head swung back down. Bullet clenched between his teeth. The funny thing is, Naruto bit down hard, shattering the casing between sharpened incisors. Under any other circumstances, you might have had a point. There, he turned his head aside to spit out the ruined remains of the round. Let me offer you my counterpoint. His eyes blazed, intent spiked. Run! Every semblance of color drained from Marcus's face. At his side, the final enforcer fainted dead away, leaving him alone. His resolve wavered, wilted as he realized everyone was looking at him. Some were reaching for their weapons. One of them drew a sword, and that was it. He turned and ran like a kicked dog, tail between his legs. His comrades were left behind to the mercy of the lanes. This isn't over, he howled over his shoulders. Just you wait. Naruto winged a pebble at his back and sent him tumbling. Yes, it is. Vi coughed into his fist behind him. Oops, he'd been so wrapped up in the act that he'd clearly forgotten about her. Relax. He pivoted and plastered a smile to his face. You're safe now. She slapped his hand aside and rounded on him with a snarl. Why did you let them go? You should have finished them off. Why? He didn't see the point in it. They're beaten. The young girl flung up her arms. They'll just come back. His lips pursed. Not if they know what's good for them, they won't. She tore her gaze away. Their kind never know. Silence stretched between them, and for an awful moment he wondered if he'd done something wrong. Beating up a few pompous guards was one thing, but he was hardly about to kill men and women in cold blood. That just wasn't his way. That she thought it was concerned him more than any words. Would you rather I kill them? Yes, Va answered without hesitation. And keep killing any who might be a threat. If they're going to storm the lanes, then you should. And I suppose I should keep killing from there, he calmed on, until everyone's suffering just the same as you. Vi went silent, her mouth sealing into a thin, angry line of defiance. Well, he planted a hand on his hip. Is that what you want? She didn't answer, bless her simple soul, but she didn't give up either. Instead, she sought a new avenue of attack. Teach me then. Now her smile died in ugly death. Excuse me? I say teach me. She latched onto his lone arm, tugging at his sleeve with surprised force for one so young. Like you taught Powder, you made her strong enough to take on someone twice her size and win. When he didn't answer immediately, she wilted under his state. Whatever gift you gave my sister, I want it. No, I need it. You made her strong. Tell me how you did it, please. I'm begging you. Naruto reared back. Well, wasn't this familiar? Powder was already strong, he said instead, dodging the question. I just helped her. Why should I teach you? What do you intend to do with chakra, assuming I gave it to you? An awful thought dawned as he gazed over long at the surly girl clinging to him. Vander had given him a spotty recollection of the kids, and their past, but here and now he saw anger in Vi's eyes, spite, a burning need to lash out, craving, vengeance. He didn't like that. No, sir, not at all. You remind me of an old friend, he frowned at her. He wanted power too, though his reasons were a bit different than yours. It didn't end well for him. I just want to protect my sister. That's maybe parts and parcel why you seek power, but we both know there's more to it than that, don't we? She didn't deny it, leaving him to bowl onwards. Vander told me enough. You want revenge for your parents, for the life that was stolen from you and Powder. You want to make Piltover hurt the way the two of you were hurt. And what if I do? He shook his head. Let it go. She sucked in a breath so raw it sounded painful to hear. What? No, never. Screw you then. I'll find another. A golden claw burst from the stump of Naruto's ruined arm and slammed into Vi, pinning her to a wall before she could run. You said you've got to for I said you've got to forget about revenge. He tightened his grip on her when she tried to struggle. I've met so many people who had the same look in their eyes as you do now. Belful eyes blazed at at an unpleasant memory. Trust me, for those who follow the path of revenge, it never ends well. You'll only tear yourself apart. Shut up! I will not. And even if you succeed with your revenge, what would you have then? I'll tell you what, he drawled. Nothing. Emptiness. Easy for you to say. Her eyes flashed as she snarled at him. You have no idea what we've lost, what we've suffered, what we've done to survive down here. Maybe if you've lost everything in your life, your parents, your friends, your family, maybe then I'd listen to you. Naruto flinched. You killed me, Naruto. Hate to bring it up to you, but you're a little late on that front. Was it wrong to feel a flash of pity spite when she winced? Maybe because he did. Everyone you're talking about has already been killed. Violet recoiled, looking like he'd slapped her across the face. You're not the only one who knows what it's like to lose someone. He crouched down before her and patted her head. It was a testament to her shock that she didn't try to escape. Thankfully, you're not all that bad off as you think. You still have your sister, don't you? Maybe be a little nicer to her, yeah? She adores you. She adores you, you know? Tan fingers tweaked her cheek, drawing a growl from her. Come to think of it, you have Clagger and Milo, not to mention Banter too. Sure, you lost your birth parents, but I think they'd be happy to know you're not alone. Unlike me. What about you? What about me? He sighed. I don't even know those anymore. There it was, the painful truth, the misery he'd been avoiding for so long. My parents are gone. I probably killed my best friend on an accident, and I have no way of getting back to my world. She hiccuped. But your world is here. He jabbed her collarbone with a finger. Don't lose sight of it. Not for anything. A tear stung at hers. I hate you. No, you hate the truth. He released Kurma's claw and let her slump to the ground, gasping for air. Be grateful for what you have, Bai. Don't throw it away for the sake of revenge. She struggled to her hands and knees and flopped forwards, weeping onto the floor. See you around, kiddo. Be good. His piece said. He turned his back to her. Wait, she called out as he slipped away. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. He raised a hand over his head and kept walking, but I tried to follow. Such a silly girl. But he lost her in the crowd. Everyone gave him a wide berth after that. Perhaps they sensed his mood. Maybe they knew better than to mess with a man like him. Just as well, if they tried now, he'd absolutely thrash them. You all right? No, he wasn't. Not at all. Damn it! He palmed his face. I need a drink. Naruto looked tired. That was Powder's first thought when he strolled into the den some hours later. Dark circles loomed around his eyes, a telltale sign of his exhaustion, but it was more than that. His shoulders almost seemed to slump, as if bowing beneath the weight of some terrible burden. He'd be all right, of course. He always was. He was Naruto, for crying out loud. Nothing put him down, not for long. You all right? She pulled out a chair for him to sit into. Heard you got into a fight. Everybody's buzzing about it. Did you now? He patted her head and didn't elaborate further. I ran into your sister again. Bye. Powder fought down a stab of dread. What did she want? Blue eyes drilled into hers. For me to train her? Dread became fear. You said no, right? His head bobbed. She's not ready. Powder didn't ever want her to be ready. This was hers, selfish as it might sound. She didn't want to share this with anyone else. It made her feel powerful, respected, unique. If Naruto up and started training by, then he would pay less attention to her. Worse, her sister would probably surpass her. Bai was always good at things. Everything she couldn't do, couldn't say, couldn't be. Naruto might even start mentoring Clagger and Milo, and then where would she be? The runt of the litter again? How's the training going? Those words cut into her, and not in the good way. She sulked at the bitter reminder and flung herself down into a chair. Nowhere fast. I can't do it. Do what? The Rasengan, what else? It's too hard. Relax, he claimed, and threw a pillow opposite her and plonked down onto it. It took me a while to get the hang of it, even longer to get it down pat. A hand came down to tousle her hair. You're making a great progress for your age. No, she ducked out from underneath his hand. I mean, I can't do it. Teach me something else. A foxy brow rose. Powder. Her face burned. Please. The weight of his gaze was a physical thing, but he sat straight beneath it. Naruto respected those who held firm to their beliefs. She'd learned that early on. So long as she had a concrete reason for her beliefs and told him the reason behind them, he would listen to her. He always did. Eventually, he yielded. Well, I could try to teach you that. Potter perked up. That Kashi Sensei told me the basics once, but I couldn't do it. Had next to no skill at it myself. He sounded almost sheepish, embarrassed even. Her hand rose. What's a sensei? Naruto favored her with a tried smile. In my world, it means teacher. Realization dawned. A hint of happy pink hit her cheeks. Teacher, he really was, wasn't he? He taught her so much, and in the years to come, she'd learn much more. She had a goal in him now, a secret one she refused to speak of. Not here, not now, not until she was older. Huh? She thumbed her nose instead. Neat. So what are you gonna teach me? Careful now. She flicked her forehead. There's a caveat. I'll do anything. You're not allowed to use this jutsu on friends or family, not in training or anything else. And Tanfinger rose. Only me. I'm fast enough to dodge it. They aren't. Do you understand? After that affinity training we did, you probably have the right stuff for this. Even so, I want your word. Why was he being so serious all of a sudden? Still, her head bobbed. No, I don't think you do. He crouched down, the better to look her in the eye. If you misuse this self for this, you miss this for the selfish means. He jabbed her shoulders with said fingers. If you turn this technique on by Vander or anyone who isn't genuinely trying to take your life, then I will take your tracker away. Her blood ran cold. Naruto had never said those words to her before. The idea of being powerless again terrified her. She'd be a nothing, a nobody, no one. Not that, anything but that. Chakra defied her, everything that she was. Without it, what was she? Nothing, just poor, powerless. Powder. Her bombs and traps still didn't work. And if she took this power from her, no, she'd rather die. I promise, she warbled, hooking her little finger around his. I won't let you down, Pinky promise. Naruto stared at her intently, judging her. His eyes traveled to their interlocked fingers. Something flashed through his gaze, an emotion he couldn't read. She wasn't sure he wanted to. Did he have a bad experience with this jutsu in the past? And that was the only thing she could think of. Whatever the case, he didn't speak of it. At length, she nodded. Will you keep trying to learn the Rasengan at least? I'm sure you can learn it. Not blooding lightly, but for his sake, she continued to try. All right. Here, he held out his hand. Give me your right arm. She did so without hesitation, not even a little. Clench your fingers into a claw. Powder did so. Now grip your wrist like so. He mimed the motion, gripping his own tight, like this, her brow furrowed. I don't feel anything, because you haven't done anything yet. Loud laughter rubbed his ears. Take a stance and close your eyes. No hesitation. Why would she? She trusted him implicitly. Good. He nudged her arm a little, humming softly as she kept her eyes closed. Now I want you to channel so as much chakra as you can and keep it there. Easy enough. Imagine it as a blade. Do you see it? The sharpest blade you can possibly think of. His voice guided her in the dark. A sword to protect, to cut through anyone and anything that would hurt your family. Do you have that image in your mind? Yep, she heard him scoff. Yep, she says, kids these days. Now grasp it. Powder complied. Something sparked to life in her. She yelped despite herself. Sparks burned her vision behind closed lids and roared in her ears like 1,000 birds chirping in unison. She heard Naruto gasp, to which her eyes snapped open, and she saw bright blue eyes, such a sight as to sear her eyes. A tiny ember of excitement sprang to life in her chest. It was beautiful, easily the prettiest thing she'd ever seen, better than the brightest blast, and then the most exciting explosion. I did it! Her concentration faltered in her glee, taking her control with it. Her jutsu fizzled out into harmless sparks, but still, it had lasted for a moment. Yet she saw. All right, Naruto leaned back and exhaled softly. That's great, Powder. I didn't think you'd managed it on your first try. Why did he sound so concerned? You really do pick this up quickly, he prattled on, running a hand through his hair. Give it a few months and we'll have it down. Still, I'm putting another roll on you for now, just in case. She blinked. Another one? To make sure you don't use this until you're ready. His hands came down on her shoulders. Promise me you won't use it frivolously. Her head bobbed in a quick, jerky nod. That's a girl. Now let's move on to something a little safer. His smile returned in earnest. Have how you feel about a little theory in sage training? And Powder's hand shot up again. Question: what's a sage? Naruto's smile was all teeth. You're about to learn. Are you certain about this boy? Deckard clenched the vial of shimmer in his fist. He humiliated me, made a fool of me. Him and that brat of his. I'll kill them. Another drink slid across the counter. Her hand snatched it up and downed it. Naruto slammed it back down. Another. Vander complied with a rueful smile. Trouble in paradise. He received a middle finger. Salute for his treble flipped. She learned too fast. Powder. The blonde's glare drilled a hole into his head. Cheeky bugger. But he was in no mood for games tonight. It seemed that was his ninth glass in as many minutes, and he was still only slightly tipsy. His body burned off the booze faster than he could consume it. He'd never been a teacher before. He sloshed the drink in the glass around him, slurring a little. I'm pants at this. I know all these techniques and tricks, but damn it, I just want her to do well. I want to see her strive, thrive, excel. Is that wrong? No, the former brawler allowed, but from what I've been seeing, hearing, she's drawing attention to herself, getting around. You need to set limits. I have. Naruto buried his head in his arms. I wouldn't teach her the literal definition of a nuke, even made her swear to keep her from using jutsu selfishly. Just thinking of it made him wince. If she doesn't keep her word, she will. Girl's got a crush on you. Naruto recalled. Seriously, she's a kid, a runt. Also your kid. Maybe now, he chortled, but give her a few years, maybe a decade. Let her grow up. Might be surprised. For a fleeting moment, he pictured her in a far-flung future, long blue braids, an impish smile, bright eyes that flashed like treachery. No, 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 no. He tried to stand, then thought better of it when his legs prostrated. We are not having this conversation. An ugly thought occurred to him. And if you're talking about limits, you need to have a long chat with Violet. Pretty damn soon, too. Vander frowned. What's wrong with Vi? Incredulity sparked to life in him. You don't know. She's obsessed with. His sixth sense shrilled a warning too late. He was only just beginning to pivot when the pub door crashed open behind him. Likewise, he sensed the enforcers coming and pivoted back, hunching down, reducing his profile long before they approached the bar. Even then, he had an instinct to take them in, 10 of them this time, and lead them. Well, some fools never learn. Oblivious to it all, Vander leaned past him. Evening, officer, he smiled, hooling at his ease. What can I get you? Marcus, because of course it was him, remained silent for a long moment. At length he spoke. Four street rats will do. 4 street rats will do. Search the place. Naruto went still as a guard bowled past him. The kids were just downstairs. If they were discovered, Vander didn't falter, not even for a moment. Can't say I know any street rats. What about you, kid? Not to blow out a sigh. Nope. I don't have time for you. Marcus finally noticed him then. His irritating glare turned downright murderous. You've got some nerve hanging around here after what you did this morning. I'll have you in irons this time. Kern was off a different opinion. Can I eat him? Naruto nearly snorted into his glass. No idea what you're talking about. He took another drink to fortify himself and hid his laughter. I'm afraid topsider business isn't my concern. It's every one of your it's every one of you treacherous concerns now. The little man actually dared to slap the glass clear of his hand. Look at me when I'm talking to you. Naruto didn't. Instead, his eyes followed the tumbling glass and the sweet release it offered. It struck the floor and shattered, taking his hopes of a peaceful night with it. A low roar rose in his ears. He'd been enjoying that drink, reveling in the simple pleasure of not having to think for once. Behind him, he physically felt Vanderwinds. Dimly, he became aware of the man speaking, saying something. It almost sounded like, don't do it. But surely that couldn't be right, no? Listen to me! An open palm cracked across his face, snapping him back to reality. He blinked and found Marcus looming over him. Or, well, trying to loom. He wasn't terribly good at it. Give me a name and this all goes away. I'll even forget your little mistake. Vander groaned. Naruto inhaled sharply through his nose. Sure, he hummed. I'll give you a two. Come here. Marcus leaned in. Naruto reached around, grabbed the bottle from the counter, and broke it over the man's head. It was a very nice sound as it shattered, he thought, more so the noise of the booze made as it soaked his uniform through. Screw you! You people down here are all the same. He stumbled back, sputtering, mistaking arrogance for bravery. You think you're standing for something? Naruto tilted his head. Yeah, I'm thinking I am. You aren't, his adversary sneered back. You're just a small man in a little hole the world forgot to bury. His gaze roved over the lot of them, one hand snapping to the baton at his waist. And I'm gonna bury the lot of you. Bigger men than you have tried. Naruto raised his head, knowing full well what was about to transpire. You know what I see when I look at you? Tired blue eyes met his, a big fish in a little pond with his little words blowing his little bubbles, never once realizing the danger, because you see, now he's not in a pond at all, he's in the ocean. Vander heaved a sigh, behind Naruto chair scrapped back. And there are monsters in these waters. He didn't feel a thing as Marcus blocked at him. No, wait, he told a lie. Pity. Today was a rare exception. He was starting to enjoy those. They had taken him the better part of 3 seconds to decide if he was willing to pounce on his bait. But now that they had, but you, a finger jabbed Marcus in the nose. I don't like your tone. Take that back. Apologize, and we can drop this. The enforcer looked up at him. And if I don't, Naruto smiled. Smack. The hell does that? His face flickered. A proper shinobi would have seen it coming, or at the very least, realized the peril, and Uchiha would have dodged away. A Hyuga deflected, and Uzumaki endured. Marcus was none of those things. He took the hit like any man would. In a word, poorly. In short, the uppercut slammed into Marcus's glass chin and sent him spinning away and over and mask over ass over elbows, shedding clothes as he went from sheer momentum alone. He struck a table, left in little more than a pair of boxers. Drink and food flew, spattering more than a few patrons. Silence descended over the bar as everyone, to a man, climbed to their feet. The man himself didn't rise again. He'd been knocked clean out. His guards bristled, and 10 enforcers alone, outnumbered, surrounded by 30 angry patrons. Naruto crossed his fingers. 10 clones joined them. The outcome was never in question. In the background, Savika wore a wolfish grin and whistled sharply. At least 15 more chairs drew back. One of the enforcers swore, "Oh, shit!" Everyone lunged at them. Previews. You have all this power, but you don't use it. You're weak. I'll take more strength. It takes more strength to restrain yourself than you could possibly know, Vi. All I know is that you're full of hot air. You won't fight, not when it matters. He was right about you. Who is he? I have power now. But put that vial down before you do something you'll regret. Are you feeling angry? Humiliated? Is that it? He caught their fist, snatched them up by the ground, and slammed them down. Dumbass, you don't know what humiliation is. I'm trying to help this place, but you're all making this so damn difficult. Powder preened. Are you proud of me? Naruto bit back a retort and patted her head instead. Good girl. Was this what it felt like to be a parent? End of chapter 5.